Good evening. Great. Well, thank you for being here this evening. I'm delighted to welcome you, both in person and virtually, to tonight's Farrell Lecture, presented by Seton Hill School of Business and the Woolkage Center for Entrepreneurial Opportunities, in partnership with the university's Alumni College. Tonight, you will hear from Seton Hill alumna JoJo Pastors Ferman, a 1999 graduate, and her colleague, Jon Hartley. We're delighted to have JoJo and Jon here in person this evening to speak on the topic, What Lies Ahead, Your Work, Your Happiness, and the Future. In the fall, JoJo and Jon joined us virtually as part of the College to Career Lecture Series, and we're delighted to have them on campus this evening for the Farrell Lecture. The series is made possible thanks to a leadership gift made in 2007 by the Farrell Family Foundation of Pittsburgh, which established the Farrell Innovation and Business Fund at Seton Hill. Over the past 16 years, Farrell Lecture Series speakers have included Rob DiMiche, retired Executive Vice President and Chief Financial Officer of UPMC, Daniel J. Woolkage, founder and CEO of Quest Healthcare, Kathleen Sarniak-Tanzola, retired CEO of Jeanette Specialty Glass, Marianne Scully, founder and former president and CEO of Howard Bank and current dean of the School of Business at Loyola, Maryland, Shuming Zhao, professor at the School of Business in Nanjing University in China, and Barbara Martin, CEO of KMA Designs. These speakers have all brought to the Farrell Lecture their unique experiences in the business world, and we're grateful to be able to provide Seton Hill students with the opportunity to hear their perspectives. It is now my pleasure to welcome Dr. Deb Chakraborty, Dean of the School of Business at Seton Hill, who will introduce tonight's speakers.
Thank you, Mary. It's indeed my pleasure to introduce tonight's speakers, JoJo Pastors Ferman and Jon Hartley. JoJo Pastors Ferman, commonly known as JoJo, is a strategist in private markets and co-producer for the Proper Exit podcast at UBS Financial Services. She earned a business management degree from Seton Hill University. Before joining UBS, she began her career at Morgan Stanley and Disney, and her teams have been ranked in the top 100 by Barron's, Forbes, and Financial Times since 2015. She is a contributor to podcasts and think tanks, such as the Manhattan Institute and Harvard in Technology. She also raises awareness for the nonprofit Homes for Veterans. Jon Hartley is an economist and researcher who earned degrees in economics and mathematics from the University of Chicago, a finance MBA from Wharton School of University of Pennsylvania, and a business and government policy MPP from Harvard University's Kennedy School. Currently in doctoral study at Stanford University, he is the chair of the Economics Club of Miami. He regularly writes for the Wall Street Journal, Forbes, National Review, Huffington Post, and elsewhere. Now, I know JoJo and Jon want this lecture to be lively and interactive. For those who are watching virtually, feel free to ask questions via chats, and our moderator, Jennifer Rieger, will make sure they're asked. Please join me in welcoming JoJo and Jon.
Thanks.
All right. Got it. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you so much for having us, yeah.
This is my first time here at Seton Hill. I'm a huge fan. I've said this probably like 20 times to like every person I've run into tonight. I'm a huge fan of St. Elizabeth Ann Seton. And I used to live near the Elizabeth Ann Seton chapel in New York City, near Battery Park City, which is absolutely beautiful if anyone here is ever visiting. I'm a huge fan, and I'm looking actually very forward after the talk to exploring more of Seton Hill. And I've no better tour guide than JoJo here.
I'm going to need a little help. It's been a couple decades, but
It hasn't been that long. It's only a couple years, right?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't aged as well as Dr. Genta. I mean, she looks the same. I don't know what she's done. I'm going to talk to her about her face cream after this presentation, but see what her regime is. But I'm going to second what Jon said. It's so wonderful to be here. This is really an area, you know, going from college to career, an area I think that really needed help when myself and actually Jon and one of my other colleagues, Dr. Bethany, is in the office, when we were going from college to career, we had a lot of questions. We got some answers, but we had to find out a lot of the answers on our own. It's just an area that it doesn't just take a village, it probably takes a large metropolitan city of help and people around you to really help you from those phases. And Rome wasn't built in a day, but it was built one day at a time. So this is one day we're here, and we're going to get one step closer to helping all of you with that bridge from college to career. So what lies ahead for all of you? As you're looking at your work, your happiness, and your future, three elements that are of crucial importance to you now and likely for the next 50, 60 years. Tyler?
Yeah, what lies ahead? We're not quite sure what lies ahead in the slides. So maybe what lies ahead question mark would have been a...
Point it down there.
We think we know what lies ahead in the slides.
There we go.
Great.
So a couple careers, when I was talking to the professors here on the Hill, they said, you work in this profession, you work in this field, in this industry, and you work in New York City. Let's get brass to tacks, and let's actually talk about some of them. So some of them are bankers, some of them retail investment bankers, you have financial analysts, and you have accountants. Probably familiar with most of those, if not all of those, but let's talk a little bit in detail about what they are. Bankers help customers with their accounts, policies, security measures, and financial matters. The retail bankers help individuals, you and I. Investment bankers help companies and corporations because they need help as well. And right now we're in a time where they need a lot of help, if anybody's been keeping on top of the news. Some of the strengths you need to succeed in this career are communication skills, personality, being organized and being efficient. Some of the exams you need to take are listed at the bottom there. The SIE stands for Securities Industry Essentials. The Series 7, the Series 66, and the Series 79. These exams take anywhere from 3 months to 6 months, depending on your workload, if you have a lot of classes going on, if you have a lot of work going on. And the end goal for this profession is just to move up in it, in management. There are domestic banks that are stateside, just in the US, and then there's international banks. International banks have been garnering a lot of attention right now. The Credit Suisse, the Deutsche Bank, what's going on, UBS, what's going on with these European banks. But that's your career route for a banker. A financial analyst, they work with banks, pension funds, insurance companies, and corporations to guide them in the balance of expending funds. Where are these funds being spent at? And to attain profits. They're trying to get profits for their company. They assess performance of bonds, stocks, and investments. The strengths you need are analytical skills, problem-solving skills, confidence, leadership, and an MBA. Sarah, you're going to be ready for this. An MBA is likely needed if you want to move up. The end goal, again, is management, maybe a C-level, and you need some of the exams we talked about and some different ones. A CFA is also needed. It's probably the highest level of financial exam you can take, and it's very, very difficult. Last one is accountant on this slide. Everyone pretty much knows somebody called the IRS. And even though you might get paid $50,000, you don't get to take home $50,000. Accountants will help you see through that. They're going to be bookkeepers, and they're going to organize your financial documents. They're going to look at your profit and loss statements. Hopefully one day all of you will make enough money where you'll want a personal profit and loss statement, and that's going to be very important to you. You're going to want personally to be a business yourself. It's an end goal for everybody. I want everybody in this room to hit $1 million Maybe some people are already there, I would love that, but I want all of you to hit $1 million as soon as possible, and then you're a personal business yourself. And that's when accountants are really going to be on your side. They're going to help you pay what taxes you need and not pay taxes in other areas, obviously in a very legal sense. So they're going to check out your profit and loss statement, whether you're a business or individual, a balance sheet. They're going to examine your assets and liabilities. Any of the accounting students or anybody who's taken accounting, you know most of this. Tax reporting and tax filing. Strengths, as we said, you're going to need some strong ethics and morals, attention to detail, adaptability, creativity when it comes to numbers, and thinking outside the box. CPAs, that would be an end goal, and also a partner controller and a chief financial officer.
I think it's also worth mentioning too, like many of these skills, even if you have like zero interest in, going into any, these individual, professions, being, investment banker is kind of like, being almost kind of like being a car salesman, but for like a massive company. My dad used to do that. He loved it. I personally, I don't think I could ever do it. But I was a financial analyst at Goldman Sachs for 5 years, and it's a lot of time in spreadsheets. And with being an accountant, you're dealing with financial statements and dealing with audit, doing audits for companies. But I think each of these sort of professions have kind of their own skills that I think are just really important for everybody to have, and everyone can sort of learn to some degree. Being a investment banker, you have to be a good salesman. Everyone here is a salesman. You're especially when you're entering the workplace, you're trying to sell yourself. That's really what you're trying to do in an interview. In an interview, you're also sort of interviewing them too. And so I think it's really important to think about how you want to market yourself, and before you go into an interview or any sort of event, even like an event like tonight. How do you sell yourself? That's kind of like thinking like an investment banker. Financial analysts. When you graduate and when you build up savings. I'm sure many people in here, I think probably most people here have a checking account. I think after you sort of graduate, your sort of next step, once you build up enough savings is, to start like a brokerage account or maybe get a financial advisor. And now you're thinking like a financial analyst and investing in diversified sort of pools of products like mutual funds, ETFs. That's what financial analysts do every day, and that's how most people tend to save for retirement. Whether you're hiring a financial advisor to do it or simply doing it yourself. A lot of people, myself included, I manage my own money through a Fidelity account. But again, you're thinking like a financial advisor, great skill to have across your life. Thinking like an accountant is great too. Building your own, you may not have an audited statement or have enough money to get an audit. Audits cost like $50,000 or $30,000 a year. They're very expensive. But you can build your own, at home tonight, you can go home and build your own financial statements in an Excel spreadsheet. You can build your own balance sheet. If you have a checking account, like I think most people here do, that goes on the asset side of your balance sheet. If you have any student debt, that goes on the liability side of your balance sheet. So same thing with a profit and loss statement. You can actually follow your expenses if you sort of go into the itemized section of your bank account. You can dig in and see, where is everything being spent, or over the past year, you can look at your monthly statements. This is where, I spent all that money, and you may, if you have a job, that goes on the profit side, but you can sort of see, exactly, from the beginning of the year, how much money you made from, say, that job that you may have, and what all your costs were. And you can sort of break that out or categorize them in different ways and sort of understand how you as an economic unit are going about your own economic activities. That's thinking like an accountant. So even if you don't want to be those three things, I think three important skills to have in each of those professions, which I think apply to everyone.
Sure. Maybe move, can you guys hear John? Move your mic up a little bit on your lapel. I thought you were going in and out.
Oh, goodness.
No, just put your mic up a little bit, maybe on your lapel.
Okay.
To get it closer to your...
Okay, is that any better now? Okay, now did nobody hear me the first time? Oh.
You got to repeat everything you just said.
Well, I'm not going to do that, but...
Can you guys hear me? I sound pretty loud, yeah.
Okay, well,
I got the back row not in there.
Good to think like an investment banker, financial analyst, and accountant. If you can be, sell yourself as an investment banker, you're always selling yourself. In those sorts of settings, financial analysts, good to think about, how you might want to invest your money when you have that job and you're saving money and, thinking like an accountant, go home, Excel spreadsheet, checking accounts an asset, your student loans, that's a liability, what you're earning, if you're making money with a job, that's at the top of your profit and loss statement, and all those things that you're spending that you can see in your bank account, in your checking account, itemized, end of month statements, that goes on the loss side. So, thinking like investment banker, financial analyst, accountant, we can all do that even if you have no interest in those professions.
Yeah, and that brings a good point up. All the slides we're going to go through are around finance and technology. And I think that those are going to be some really hot areas no matter what you do. If you are a physician, if you're an accountant, if you own a small business, if you own a car dealership, if you're a pharmacist, whatever you are, finance and technology as we go forward is going, finance and business and money has always been a big part of our life. I mean, it's how we fund our lives, right? How we fund everything in our lives. But technology is going to be a very important part too. So all these slides we're going through are relevant. And here we go. There we go. A couple more financial professions. Financial planner and financial manager, insurance agent, and economist and researcher. So financial planners and manager, we alluded to this, they help people and businesses create plans and roadmaps to achieve their long-term goals and purchases. If you can't do that on your own, hopefully you all just have so much money and you need people to help you. These people will help you. Chart your financial journey and implement portfolio management. What do I invest in? Does everybody know what fixed income is and stocks and bonds? Maybe, maybe not. You probably know the top level, but you don't know each detail underneath it. It's a big onion, it's a big banana, and when you peel all the layers, which ones are good, which ones are bad? Planners and managers will help you navigate through that. Some of the strengths you need to succeed in this career, if you think you're interested in any of these careers and your strengths line up, you should definitely follow these careers. So this one requires empathy, psychology, universal personalities, analytical skills, and being proactive and have good marketing skills. The end goal, when you are helping people, you want to increase as many millions and billions under management. You want to help a lot of people. That makes the success of a planner and a manager. You could be a portfolio manager, you could be a managing director, some of the exams you need, 766, CIMA program, CFP, or CPM. A CPM is a certified portfolio manager. That guy is picking stocks. He's picking stocks, and if he's making money at it, he's better than anybody else, and he's making a lot of money. CFP is a certified financial planner. They are looking at everything in your life, how much you paid for your cars, how much you paid for your houses, how much you have extra, what your salaries are. And then a certified investment management analyst. That is an analyst that is looking at particular investments and their interplay with one another. So the CPM is for the most part of stocks, but the CIMA is all types of investments, traditional, alternative investments, private markets, and private credit. Insurance agents, I remember growing up around here and seeing a lot of insurance agents, a lot of insurance agent signs, because you need insurance for everything. You need insurance if your house catches on fire. You need insurance if you're texting at a red light or a green light and you don't go and the person behind you comes and fender benders you. You need insurance for a lot of things. You need insurance if you get older and you acquire disability, or you have long-term care insurance, or you need medical insurance. Everybody knows what insurance is. This is a classic tradition that is oftentimes, so I have certifications in the top level, the financial planner and financial manager. I have some of those licenses and registrations, and I also have the insurance agent registrations. So those work very closely together. Insurance agents develop the right coverage plans for each client and each business, their needs. They determine the amount of money needed to see you through emergency and unforeseen circumstances. The bedrock and the bedstone of insurance is seeing you through emergency, unforeseen circumstances. Strengths needed to do this: you need energy, because you're going to talk to a lot of people about a lot of different things, customer service, ethics, and product knowledge. There's a lot of products out there. You need to know which ones are fantastic and the ones that aren't, that are just cash grabs. The end goal, you want to have a lot of customers, you want to have a lot of millions and billions under your management and policies sold. Some exams you need to take, a little different. You know, we see some new numbers, some different exams, 6, 63, and 24, and then there's state insurance licenses. The last one is what Jon does right now. He was a financial analyst, but right now he's an economist and researcher. Part of their job is reviewing production and distribution of goods, services, and resources, oftentimes in a particular state, particular country, particular continent, or the world. They collect, study, and analyze large amounts of data, research, trends, issues, policies, and contribute their insights and findings to improve the industry. They are looking at all of that all the time. Nobody else can really do that. That's a profession in and of itself because there's so much out there. He too has to weed out between who's relevant, who's writing accurate information, and who's not. The strengths are you need a desire to learn, share, teach, progress, and enlighten and evolve. Can you guys still hear me? Okay. You want to have a lot of experience under your belt. The more experience you have under your belt, the more you're going to know. You are constantly consuming information. Experience, season, and graduate degrees. Jon actually has a whole lot more degrees, but we're on a we're watching time tonight. We can't really go through all his degrees, or we'd probably be here till tomorrow at 6 p.m. in the evening. The end goal is to be a consultant, a thought leader, an influencer, and perhaps land on a national and international council and the White House. I know some of your mentors have worked in the White House.
Absolutely.
So.
Well, economics is great. I mean, how many people in here have taken an economics class? A good chunk of people, so roughly half, maybe a bit more.
It's good, 50%.
A lot of people. Well, it's great. You know, what's so fun about economics is like it's such a great toolbox. Again, like if you have no interest in being an economist or researcher, it's great. It's also like such a great tool set. Also, having insurance is great too. That one's really important. But in economics, you learn consumption smoothing is a big part of why insurance is so great. Economics is a great lens. It's really just the study of incentives, and it's not even limited to analyzing money or the stock market, or it can be applied to a whole wide variety of social settings. Whether you're interested in understanding crime, or you're interested in understanding so many different things that are going on in the world, immigration. There's so many topics that economics, you're interested in studying health. Economics lends a very interesting sort of perspective to these things. I'm definitely biased, but I think it's certainly, we're talking a lot about, there's been a lot of interest in what's going on with regional banks over the past few weeks. There's been some bank runs. 3 weeks ago was one of the craziest weekends in recent history for me, because I live on Stanford University campus, and a bunch of people called me up and said, hey, I have money at this place called Silicon Valley Bank. Jon, you used to work on Wall Street. Do you know how I can get my money out of this bank and into a much safer bank? And it was a very strange experience, and not actually my area of finance either. But it's amazing, when these crises happen, and they tend to happen every good number of years. Things get really interesting and things move very, very quickly. And so, if you've been following that, it's still very unclear what's going to happen, whether or not all regional banks will get unlimited deposit insurance or not. But if most people here have a bank account, right? A checking account. If you have a checking account, no matter where you are, you at least until recently had $250,000 in deposit insurance from the FDIC. According to the books, it's what you still have, but it may go to unlimited deposit insurance. But again, with economics, a big one sort of key tenet to economics is that there's always trade-offs. There's no such thing as sort of like a free lunch. Even though you may be getting unlimited deposit insurance now, it's likely that you're going to end up paying for that in some way, maybe not directly, but through higher account minimums. If you're old enough to remember from 10 years ago, there used to be this thing called free checking, where you could have a checking account, you could literally put $1 in that checking account or $10 in that checking account, and you didn't have to pay these monthly fees. That is not the case anymore. I certainly have a couple of bank accounts that have very little, like maybe $100 no more in it, and it keeps getting overdrawn for me, and I get frustrated. But the reason why this happens is because there's these new account minimums that have existed since largely the Dodd-Frank Act, this big financial regulatory bill, was passed 10 years ago. But I think what's going to happen is those minimums are probably going to go up if there's going to be more deposit insurance, and so anyone who's got a checking account here, your account minimums may be going up soon. So again, these things are good to know, I'd say, even if you have absolutely no interest in being an economist or researcher. These sort of skills and ideas are very widely sort of relevant.
All right, switching gears a little bit to technology. We have some technology majors in the crowd? A couple back there. How about finance, business, marketing, any of that? How many of those majors do we have? Okay, a little bit heftier in that crowd.
Ooh, marketing, I like it. It's popular.
So some entry-level technology, whether you're majoring in it, minoring in it, or you should have somewhat of a working knowledge of what's going on. Technology is going to be a very important and relevant and consistent daily part of your future. So we have a couple, the couple macro areas: database and forensics, analytics, cloud security and application security, and malware and cybersecurity. Just as we needed to protect our money, we also need to protect our information and technology. So database and forensics analytics, they ensure the integrity, the availability, and accessibility of the database. You start off as a developer, a designer, a programmer, and they're responsible for the construction and basic needs, the ongoing maintenance and finalization of the database. You need to be very analytical in this profession, be able to make decisions and a bias to action. An end goal can go in so many different directions because this trade is needed everywhere. You could be a founder of a new company. You get out there working, you identify some needs that aren't being met, you find a company to solve those needs, solve those problems, you've got a company. Political administrations, the CIA, FBI, everyone needs these. You rise up, you could always be then chief and running your organizations. You want degrees of BA or BS in computer science, information system, build project portfolios, you get paid and non-paid. So how you get into this profession, and I'm seeing this probably in a lot of different professions and industries, it's really important to have a great body of work on your resume, your portfolio, your CV. Sometimes getting a great experience and money doesn't always happen when you just have a bunch of education. If you find an opportunity that you're going to get tremendous experience but you're making little to no money, take it while you can. Take it as long as you can, and you'll learn that experience. And someday probably soon, you will get paid for that experience. So that's why I have paid and non-paid up there. You want to be familiar with systems on Oracle, Microsoft, all of their OCA, MC, DBA. Those are development, security and cybersecurity, information systems, all those certifications for the analytics. In the cloud security and application security, those are the folks that are essentially the technology police. They're going to identify the threats to cloud systems. They're going to develop new features and meet security needs. They're constantly going to be building, maintaining, upgrading, and continuously improving the cloud-based systems. Some strengths needed for this is you need a lot of knowledge across a lot of different platforms because you're looking for problems. You need to look for issues. You need to look for vulnerabilities, determine how to correct and problem solve. You're going to then need to do updating on all the software, looking at the firewalls, and then running different encryption programs on the computer networks and applications. The end goals, you could work almost anywhere. Corporations, political administrations, again, a background somewhere in computer technology, internet technology, computer science, information security, programming, work experience. Build that portfolio up of paid and non-paid. A lot of my friends strictly in technology. I am an analyst in technology, and I'm an avid enthusiast of technology, but it's not my primary lane, it's my secondary lane. But build up that experience and portfolio, anything paid or non-paid. Again, some of the certifications needed: certified computer software engineer and programmer, and information systems certifications. The last one is malware and cybersecurity. This is a big slash roll of the two above, and additionally some security engineering, digital forensics, and programming. This is a function that's in-depth intelligence, preventing and working through cybersecurity events. Cyber attacks have been identified and contained. It becomes critical that a thorough analysis and examination of the incident takes place. You're going to need some in-depth skills in malware and cybersecurity. You're going to need to be cognitive, very proactive. You've got to put issues out there, put problems out there that haven't happened yet, but how would you deal with them? You're doing a lot of guinea pig problems, guinea pig crisis, and how well do you and your team and your systems respond to it. You've got to have good technical attention to detail skills, and the end goal, really nice end goals, are retail, giant corporations, big banks, administrations, and governments. Some of the similar information technology, cybersecurity, and malware security certifications, and enhancement specialists. Programming. Cut out. Check, check. Ba-da-ba-da-ba-da. Yeah, so whether it's a major or minor, these last slides of finance and technology, be in touch with them. Now,
I don't know anything about technology. I'm always the last person
to
download that app, or I was the last person in my friend group to get an iPhone.
What phone are you on?
I'm like the 2018. I don't know what is it. The
not-
iPhone. I still
I thought
have
you were gonna whip out a
I still have
flip
one
phone.
camera. All these people have like 3 cameras now, and I still can't understand it. But yeah, I really I think this applies to everything, which is specialization. I'd say with any career, it's if you can sort of really become an expert and get to know like one particular area, whether that's it could be artificial intelligence, it can be database management, it can be finance. I'd say the returns to specialization are so great that if you can really focus in one area and become sort of like a sort of local subject matter on that topic, whether it's within your firm or within your community, I'd say that's just there's so much of return to that. Now, if you're like me, you have many interests, you can get spread thin, and this is not always the best thing to have. Having lots of interests, a great thing, and hobbies are great as well. And also, I mean, that being said, you can also pivot across these things over time too. You can start as I know many people that have started doing investment banking, and then later they decided they wanted to do investment management, or people have started in consulting, and they later on work in corporate America. And so there's a lot of, some of these skills are also very complementary too. And so I think there's, I certainly don't think that when you graduate that you have to know exactly what you have to do or what you're going to do for the rest of your life. And in fact, sometimes I think the best opportunities are the ones that you sort of don't expect coming. Though, at the same time, you also, want to be, I think, intentional about finding opportunities too. It's not necessarily that opportunities are just going to show up at your doorstep, but I think putting yourself in the right room, a lot of great unexpected opportunities can certainly happen.
So last in our areas of work and career, very hot area now and is going to stay so going forward. You might have seen in the news in the last couple weeks, there's been a lot of debate, AI ethics debate. Some of the percentages are really high that artificial intelligence is going to replace, I heard from a few business leaders and business economists that artificial intelligence is going to replace 80% of the jobs. And they quickly backtracked on that because 80% of the jobs, it's enormous. I don't agree with that. I think it does have the potential to eliminate a lot of positions and a lot of jobs, but you're always going to need humans to tell the technology what to do and to police the technology and write the technology and manage the technology. So I think that artificial intelligence is going to replace somewhere in the ballpark of 25 to 50%. But don't be afraid because there's going to be new jobs created. They just might be around technology. There's going to be new jobs, there's going to be new technology. So yeah, some of the old ones that AI can replace, that humans don't necessarily want to go into, I think that's the way to go. I think that's where we're going to hit first. But when that statistic over the past couple weeks, if you just Google AI ethics, you're going to see so much from the months of February and March because of how far it's gone.
Has anyone actually tried ChatGPT yet?
Yep.
Okay. I want to ask if anybody's used it for an assignment because I know, you could maybe get in trouble for that. But it is fascinating. I think so much of this discussion is based
because it would do it for you.
this.
It would do the assignment for you, so it's fine.
Yes.
All the professors are looking this way. You can freely raise your hand. We'll tell you when any of them turn their heads around.
Yeah. Yeah, so for those of you that don't know, ChatGPT, it's this really interesting thing. It's an open source toolbox, and it's called it's a large language model. That's sort of the fancy term for it. And what it does is, you essentially can, you have a text box, and you can just put into it. You can ask it a question, and like any question, and it will respond to you like a human would. And essentially, what it's doing is, it's been trained on millions and millions of articles online that have already been written, and it's trained to sort of read these things in a somewhat intelligent way, and so that's how it's coming up with these answers. It's not necessarily coming up with thoughts that are totally original. I guess it depends on how you define originality. So it's not exactly like speaking to another human, and there's a lot of strange things that you can see in it that are sort of based off of certain articles that have already been written. But it's very, very fascinating, and certainly has generated a lot of controversy. Certainly ranging from people writing entire essays for classes and submitting them. There's been, I think, a record number of these sorts of plagiarism cases at a number of schools just recently that have been announced. But also just think how far it could go, and replacing jobs and having serious impacts that could have potentially negative welfare benefits. I mean, there's a huge discussion about the ethics around this, and there's many other ethical issues around AI as well to discuss too.
Yeah, as we were saying, it's opened up possibilities for the future, from space exploration to melanoma detection to daily living. It's making waves across industries, making the impossible things possible. Some of the professions are machine learning, data analytics, big data architecture, business intelligence, research science, and software and robotics engineering. I know it's staggering to see there are some individuals and some professionals now that are in the age group of their ages 25 to 30. They started researching computer science and information systems and technology, mostly on the West Coast when they were teenagers. They're now between the ages of 25 and 30, and they're making more than $1 million a year because they are so deep in this knowledge, and it's so needed right now. They're studying, you want to have a background in mathematics, statistics, and computer science, Python, Tableau, and SQL, functionality in the clouds, knowing your way around the clouds, analysis, processing, and visualization. There's a lot of online professional courses and certifications, and all of these companies, as well as hundreds, if not thousands more, have been a rolling hire. If you have background in AI, you will get an interview and likely get hired at any of these corporations because they are so in need of it. And you see Apple, Google, Microsoft, Adobe, IBM, PricewaterhouseCoopers, KPMG, Accenture, GlaxoSmithKline. I think it's right here in Pittsburgh, or at least it was. Walmart, Abbott, Amazon, Warner, and Bloomberg. And that's just the tip of the iceberg.
All right, this is a very scary page here.
So before John gets into it, John is a fellow at freeop.org,
yeah, so
which is who did this study. And it's a very, very interesting study. And I'm going to give you the microphone because that's how important this is.
I appreciate it. Oh, thank you. Thank you, JoJo. So as JoJo mentioned, so I'm one of my roles is being is a research fellow at a think tank called the Foundation for Research on Equal Opportunity, or FREOP, F-R-E-O-P-P. And we have an office in DC and another in Austin. And one of my colleagues who focuses on education policy, he created this this really interesting, basically a massive spreadsheet, or kind of think of it as almost like a model kind of thing, but it's essentially a way of looking at data on the return to different college degrees and different majors. And I think it's really important, I think, to understand that, not all majors are sort of created equal, and, that there's different returns to different majors. And this is, a reality. It's, I love school so much. I've gotten 4 degrees. And it probably, all 4 of them weren't such a good idea. I'm not going to tell you which ones weren't the best idea. But different majors lead to different career paths, and every career path is different, and so what's interesting to think about is, what is, the average return on one major versus another? And I think that this is sort of an eye-opening type of experience to think about these different, ROIs, or returns on investment, for different majors. And so how my colleague calculates a return on investment for different majors, and not only that, not only for different majors, but also it's also school specific as well. It's partially based on demographics and regions and so forth. But the sort of the thought experiment is, what would you, if you were to decide as a Seton Hill student, if you were to take this major, what would you earn with sort of the average kind of career that comes after having that major? What would be your lifetime earnings from that, minus your lifetime earnings if you had never gone to college, if you chose not to come to Seton Hill, and if you just chose to enter the workforce right away after high school, minus your tuition costs. So when sort of viewing this, it's important to sort of like, the assumption here is that you're paying full tuition, you're paying, so if you're on student aid, for example, these numbers don't apply to you. And also I think it's just important to remember too that these are averages, and there's also other sort of, I guess, statistical sort of things too that you have to sort of consider as well. So again, these numbers are not perfect, they're not deterministic, and they are not to be a major cause for concern. But what I think is interesting, and JoJo and I were talking about this earlier, so like if you look at certain majors, there's a really big premium on certain areas like STEM. So if you look here, I don't know if anybody here can actually see these numbers because they're a little bit small. But if you look at computer science here, your average earnings at age 45, sort of net of your expected costs, are $90,000 a year. And your sort of lifetime return on investment is $481,000 on average. Again, this is sort of net of the costs of going, the direct costs that you're paying your tuition, net of your counterfactual earnings. That is, if you had not come to Seton Hill, you'd gotten a job somewhere, you'd be earning something. You got to subtract that off too. So this is sort of thinking about, what's the marginal value of choosing to do this major versus not attending college. So what is the value of the degree? So just throwing up some other numbers here. It's really interesting. There's some majors here that have like really high returns. So you have business administration, management, and operations. That's $244,000. It's one of the most lucrative majors. Again, computer science, $481,000. You also have marketing, all those marketing folks out there. That's actually one of the really big ones too. So very, very lucrative major. The dietetics, another one of the most lucrative majors. Not to name names, but there are a couple of majors. For example, like drama, theater arts. That's one of the lower ones. I believe it or not, I was an extra in The Wolf of Wall Street, and I'm in the poster. This was not in the intro. This is a fine Catholic institution, but I've done extra work in these sorts of movies, and it's a very difficult thing. As much as I love film, and I love these sorts of I love the theater. The challenge is you're working on a project to project basis. I think I got paid maybe like a few $100s for 2 days of work on The Wolf of Wall Street. Yeah, well, exactly. It was pretty wild, and all these movie stars are walking around the set, and Martin Scorsese's there and so forth. Very cool experience. But the thing is, it's like it's a 2-day job, and I'm not kidding. If you look at one of the posters for The Wolf of Wall Street, you will see my face. It is there. I'm not joking. This is not a joke. This is a serious thing. Yeah. I'm trying to, yeah, I've got to atone for this appearance. I want to get into The Chosen if I ever get back into film. But, I only got paid probably, $300 or $400 or so for those 2 days, $400 or $500. And, again, 2 full days worth of work. And, it's great pay. It's great pay for 2 days. But, the challenge is, once that's done, so you got to find the next movie, right? And, there's only so many films. If you're living in New York City, you're doing extra work. There's only so many films and so many opportunities that you can go to. And so, this is why a lot of people, you hear these famous stories of these, famous actors, they early on, they were working as, waiters and waitresses because, that's what they had to do to sort of make their economics work. So that, that's in part, why there are some like great tail, outcomes, for the, the Al Pacinos and the Leonardo DiCaprios of the world. They're doing very well for themselves. I'm not sure if they studied, drama in college, and I don't think Leonardo DiCaprio went to college. But there's, many people who study, at plenty of schools who study it. But again, just I think it's important to sort of think about, these sorts of, this reality that exists. That the different majors, lead to different outcomes, and again, not to name names, health, physical fitness, that's another big negative one. Because and maybe it's just the case that it's just the cost of college. You didn't really need to study this in college, and really, it's just you would have done just as well, sort of, trying to do extra work, without going to college. That's just sort of the thought experiment, and it's all about using your, how you want to use your time. It's up to you, and again, this is not a judgments kind of thing, just trying to present some facts. But again, some of the biggest sort of ROI on some of these majors are things like computer science. I don't know if anybody's heard the phrase STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics. Those tend to have high returns. Business majors, marketing majors, all very, very high return on investment. Again, lots of statistical flaws. Again, these are just average outcomes. Again, you could be, Leonardo DiCaprio. It's very possible. So, if you're very confident of that, you go for it. But again, these are sort of average outcomes for different majors. I'll give this back to you. I'm sorry if that was scary.
If you want to see more and read more, there's the website, freeup.org. This will be included in the take-home, anybody that wants to reference this after the presentation.
Yeah, there's other really great websites too, like this is largely most of this data comes from the college scorecard. So how would you even have that data to begin with? Well, the Department of Education has built this thing called the college scorecard. And what they do is they take tax return data from the IRS, and they match that to people's college records through Social Security numbers, and so they can sort of track, people who went to different schools and different majors, and what were their, average, incomes over their lifetimes. And so that's where this comes from. Again, it's sort of looking back, it's somewhat backward looking, right? And it's possible that the majors that are the best sort of highest ROI majors going forward might not be the same as the ones that were higher ROI in the past. It's quite possible that things like ChatGPT and AI, you could actually significantly disrupt the computer science market, right? Because one thing that the ChatGPT and things like that can do is they can write computer code really fast and probably a lot better than humans can too. So what will be the highest ROI majors in the future? Again, may not be the same as the ones in the past, but again, time will tell. But interesting information, I think, for people to look at.
So I get this question a lot. JoJo, I need to I know if I just had a killer resume, I could get the interview and I could get the job, the dream job. How do I have a killer resume? Well, behind every killer resume, there's several non-killer resumes. Right now, all of you should have one-page resume until you have I would say anywhere from 10 to 15 years experience, you put it on one page. Save us hirers all the trouble. Give me your best and your brightest on one page. But what I see is a lot of times people come to me and they can't even fill up one page. And they're just, oh, I just need to fill up this one page. That's the wrong perspective. To get one killer resume, you have several non-killer resumes behind it. You take jobs, you take internships, you go to summer camp, you take summer programs, you do what you need to do. Some are going to be great, some are not going to be great. Keep your expectations manageable, moderate or low, and keep building it. Even if you have a few low, maybe not moving the meter type of experience, if you put all those on there, then you're going to see somebody who really appreciates hard work and work ethic. And that person is going to be for a big company working for a big brand. And then you're going to work for them. And then you're going to have that on your resume. And then you don't need Taco Bell and KFC and American Eagle and Express and Starbucks and everything else that you only spent 3 months at. You had to do. You had to get a job, right? But if you do a bunch of small ones, somebody's going to really appreciate that you showed up at all those places. Do a good job, whether you're there for 3 months or 6 months. Get somebody on your side, whether it's a supervisor, manager, somebody that hired you, a coworker, that they see how good and what a great work ethic you are. So that's how you get a killer resume. Is this a surprise to anybody? Look at this, job success. This is kind of one if you think you might not be the smartest one in the class, you might not be the Jon Hartley in the class. This is your slide. Look, only 25% of job success is predicted by your intelligence quotient. 75% is predicted by optimism, happiness, and your ability to welcome stress as a challenge and not a threat. And I'm going to repeat that last line. Your ability to welcome stress as a challenge and not a threat. Did anybody ever hear adversity differentiates the girls from the women and the boys from the men? That's what this is all about. We're going to come to a video at the very end. I saved a really good video for the end. We're going to come to that. You're welcome right now.
One other thing I just would add to that, is I really do think that there's no substitute for hard work, and I think that's sort of embodied, having optimism, how to sort of be persistent. Really, I think so much comes down to persistence over luck or IQ or sort of these other, I guess, things that are sort of out of your control. I really do think, and speaking from my own limited successes, really I think if you are willing to put in the time and you're willing to work on something really hard, and again to what we mentioned earlier, specialize, focus on a certain area. I think that matters so much more than IQ or luck. Really, like if you are a go-getter, and sometimes you do have to take no for an answer. But if you're very just determined and persistent, I think determination and persistence is really one of those secret sort of, and maybe not so secret, but just ultimate keys to success. And no matter what it is, if you want to be a great chess player, if you really are willing to put in the time and play practice games and puzzles all the time, you will get there. And I think it's very much the same with job and career sort of quote success, or just sort of finding something that you want to have as your sort of long-term calling in life as a profession.
So, according to Purdue University, a study that they did recently in 2021 and Harvard University in 2010, here are some advantages of happiness. I mean, what one of those advantages don't you want? You want a secure job. You want to keep your job. You want to have superior productivity and efficiency. You want to be more resilient, thick-skinned. That's not going to come in a day, in a week, in a couple years. It's going to come over time. You want less burnout and less turnover. And the last two are going to come up again. That's why I have them asterisked as well. You're going to have greater sales, and you're going to have an easier time public speaking. And this is a huge translation. If you can sell, persuade people, and publicly speak, the world is yours without question. And I'm going to guess the two scariest ones up there are also the last two. Great story on optimism and resilience. You were a little bit of my spoiler alert there, John, but you jumped to it, but here we go. His father left the family before he was a teenager. He was severely bullied in high school and once hospitalized after a group threw him down a flight of stairs. While in his 20s, he moves continents, he works 2 jobs in college, and graduates with $100K in debt. In his 20s and 30s, he starts a bunch of companies which go stagnant or run out of funding in the global financial crisis, and he simultaneously goes through his first divorce. This guy's not having much luck. He manages through, he makes calm, collected decisions along the way. He and his colleagues welcome stress. They learn how to welcome stress and welcome failure, saying Silicon Valley entrepreneurs can fail and keep going. In order to achieve huge financial success in your 30s, you must endure huge frequent failures in your 20s. Fear is finite, hope is infinite. We are afraid of failing, he said, but it doesn't stop us from trying and keeping going. Anybody want to take a stab on who that is? Close, but no. Close, but no. We got a picture moment up here in the front row, so I'm going to wait. Did you get it? Did you get it, Beauty? She got it. Okay.
Yeah, I think what these sorts of stories really point to is I guess there's a lot of people who are scared of failing, and I'm still one of them, and I think it's one of those things where it's probably one of the most destructive fears that you can possibly have. And why that is really sometimes you don't even know what you're going to be good at. I think this is one of those things that I think is so partially unnerving in being in college, and the idea that you have to pick one career and sort of stick with that, or one major and stick with that. Sometimes it takes I think you don't necessarily know what you're good at. And I'm still figuring out what I'm good at myself, at an older age here. But really, how you figure out what you're good at and what you really enjoy comes through failure and trying things. And so I think trying a lot of different things, taking courses in areas that you hadn't taken before. If you hadn't taken an economics class, or maybe you're scared of it because it was a bit number focused or math oriented, or same thing with a coding class or computer science class, or maybe an acting class. You thought you just wouldn't be couldn't memorize lines, or you wouldn't be a great public speaker or something like that. Again, I think really putting yourself out there, trying things, new things or different things, and not being afraid to fail. Starting a company. You think it was a good idea. Elon Musk did that a whole bunch of times, and many people have failed along. Many people have failed along the way, but it's through those failures that you really start to learn and understand what you're good at, what worked and what didn't, and it's through that process of failing and learning, I think that you can build those ultimate successes. So I think. It can't be said enough. Really, trying lots of things and not being afraid to fail, and actually making sure you do fail at some things, because if you're not failing at some things, you're probably not trying enough things, or
you're not trying hard enough.
And not being persistent enough. If you're not eventually getting to people telling you no, then maybe you're not trying hard enough, you're not trying enough things, or you're not being persistent enough. So again, not being afraid to fail and put yourself out there. I think that's a really key thing, and certainly in thinking about your career.
So just a couple things to remember, that they all have the same stress as you and me. They do just deal with it better. They started early. They sought out quality-worthy opportunities. They failed often. As Elon said, he's fine with failing. It's necessary to fail. They just bounce back quicker than average people. Mistakes are the spell books of success. Study them and learn their curves. When muscles tear, they rebuild stronger. Personally, when I was in my 20s, the things that I probably spent a month or two being failures that I spent a month or two being upset about, I spend maybe an hour right now. The more you go out there, the more you fail, Something I had to learn was how to bounce back quicker. I carried failure, and I carried things didn't go my way right then and there. I carried that with me longer than what it needed to be carried. But now I don't. Now I don't. But I wasn't born that way. None of us are born that way. Bouncing back is it's not talked about enough. And it's a true gift and talent and a skill that needs to be worked at and acquired. Comfort doesn't make diamonds, stress makes diamonds. Pressure is a privilege. Billie Jean King. I think most people know who she is, but she was the first female Grand Slam champion with multiple. She broke through all sorts of glass ceilings for
Great tennis player.
Female tennis players.
Great tennis player.
The U.S. Open in New York, the entire campus facility is called the USTA National Tennis Center, Billie Jean King National Tennis Center.
Do we have a lot of tennis fans here? Who plays tennis somewhat regularly?
All right, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Woo! Like
Tough
it.
in the winter, too. It's tough. Tennis is a great sport. Also, it's great because you only need a racket and a ball. It's not like golf where you need, a big, club of, expensive clubs or skiing's also, very expensive too. Tennis, it's, you just need a racket, and it's similar to, like, I guess, soccer and basketball. You only need a ball or, great sports.
So I talked to executives and some professionals that were really early on, and some founders of the Climate Corporation, none of the founders at Google, but I talked to professionals that work at both of those organizations, and this is what they look for when they're hiring. They're looking for, this is the backbone to success, as two of them told me, this is the backbone to success. If they talk to a person and they see through that person's personal and professional life to that point, what's on their resume and the life that they live, and they have these, they exemplify these, they hire them on the spot, even if they have no job opening for them. Grit and persistence through failure. John was talking about that. Being an effective oracle and storyteller. Being an effective salesperson. Oh, I think we saw that one before. Bias to action and orientation to action. Make decisions. This is a tough one that also needs to be learned, and it's not something that's maybe on the basic of, oh, you gotta, when I was in high school and college, it was just, you gotta work a lot, you gotta work as much as possible, and you gotta work hard. Nobody was actually giving me brass tacks, actual details of beyond that. I knew that. I knew I had to work a lot and work a lot of jobs. But it's really important to have a bias to action, orientation action, and make decisions. It is more important to practice making decisions than it is trying to make one right decision. Pace and frequency over accuracy, monthly over yearly. You'll be much further along in the learning process making 20 decisions and fixing 5 in a year's time over attempting to make 2 right decisions in a year's time. Because if you only have 2 problems and you try to solve those 2 problems, you're not very good at something that you only do 2 times. But if you do it 20 times, chances are you're only going to have to back out and change 5. It may be a different way of thinking, but that's how we have to think.
Absolutely. Practice makes perfect. I think
So studies recently, success traits out of Amherst, NYU, and UConn. This is what employers are coming to them and saying they want to see, and that they're often seeing that these traits and what's going on right now, these are all from 2023 and 2022. The power of work ethic, attendance, punctuality, no missed days except hospital and bereavement in initial 2 years. And these ones specifically from these studies are for, I think, all of you students. When you don't have much experience, this is for 5 years or less of work experience. This is what employers want to see and are working to deal through. Allow for anxiety. Don't underestimate the increase of anxiety. Look for a work environment and schedule that you can deal with. Some prefer hybrid and some prefer all office days. Length and experience. Stay at your first solid company for a minimum 2 years. Right now, this is not, your burgers at McDonald's, your burgers at Burger King, at Chipotle, you're making burritos. This is not what they mean. This is your first solid company. This is your UPMC, Allegheny General, Coca-Cola, Sony, the solid companies around here. If Kennametal is still around here, IBM, Apple, your first solid company. That's what they're talking about. Make every effort to stay for a minimum of 2 years because that is going to move you You're either going to love it and you're going to be able to move within the company, or it's going to move you to where you want to be. But you're not going to be taken seriously if you jump around too much, because I see this happening and I see the data and statistics and it's not working. Find your first solid company yesterday, all hands on deck with urgency. Utilize employee assistance if you're struggling in any way. Everybody was for a couple years, just a couple years ago. And a lot of people still are. So whenever you're struggling, utilize employee assistance. Keep active, whatever you need to do to keep active to manage your stress, anxiety, and meet people. The imposter syndrome is real. Treat it as such. And the last one, mentors. Find mentors and find peer mentors. What makes a great mentor and the importance of having one? That's an article in Forbes. It's right there. But I'm going to go back here. Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger are peer mentors to each other, and John and I are peer mentors to each other. And we have tons of peers. If Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger have tons of mentors and peer mentors, and they have billions and billions of dollars, why wouldn't you? They got there through mentors and peer mentors.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if anyone's read the book, The Intelligent Investor. It's a book written.
It's on the list. I put it on the list.
It's good. It's on the list. But yeah, Ben Graham, he was one of Warren Buffett's early mentors, and this was a time when value investing. I don't know if anyone here has heard of value investing. The idea is buying companies for cheap accounting values relative to their market values, like what companies are trading in the stock market. So think accounting values, what sort of is reflected there versus what the market's pricing. That whole concept was sort of really pioneered by this Columbia University professor, Ben Graham, almost about 100 years ago, and he wrote a couple books, The Intelligent Investor and Security Analysis, and Warren Buffett, who's been around for a while. He was Ben Graham was one of his mentors, and he had him as a professor, and that's in part how Warren Buffett learned these sort of value investing ideas that before many other people later piled on and learned these ideas, and was really able to be a first mover in sort of the value investing space, and that's kind of how he sort of ended up becoming a billionaire. But I think really more than anything, a mentor. In a lot of workplaces, it's like Goldman Sachs. They have a formal mentorship kind of program thing, and the idea is that you're formally paired with a mentor who's senior to you. And I understand. I think there's some other. I think a lot of mentorship programs like that you can find. I think those are really great, if you're able to find them. I was talking to Sarah Soon here earlier tonight, and she's a very cool mentor who's a sports agent. I think if you can find those sort of formal mentorship settings, that is really wonderful. A lot of the time, there aren't going to be those. A lot of times in your life and in general, I think there aren't going to be formal mentorship sort of pairing strategies like that. But I think really, it comes down to finding people who are a little bit are somewhat older. Again, if at some point you will become the mentor yourself. So where you'll be finding mentees, and part of that, I think sending the elevator back down, that process, I think is really important to do that later on. But again, we're here. We want to be mentees and finding mentors. You guys are at that point in your life where I think it's really important to find older people who've had different life experiences. And again, it doesn't even have to be career related. It's somebody who you could think of them as maybe they're a confirmation sponsor, or maybe they're an uncle, a parent. If all those family members that you have, they are all mentors as well. Your professors, they've seen a lot. All these people, who've had all these wonderful experiences, they are all mentors to you, and you can find new ones, by taking that class, or by doing that, volunteering. Again, it doesn't have to be a formal workplace setting. When you get to the workplace, they will be there, and people like your manager and other senior people in your workplace, they will be great mentors for you. But I think even in those settings, I think it's also really important to find people who aren't in your own workplace people who have, if you want to be, a financial analyst, people who have done that and are outside your company and have seen a lot of things, but you can speak to them in confidence without sort of having to deal with or talk about workplace politics or be influenced by workplace politics, where you may not feel totally comfortable talking to a direct manager about some life advice. Like you're not going to necessarily ask your manager, well, how should I ask for a raise? If it's in the incentive of your manager not to give you a raise, for example. But I think finding people on today we have so many resources like LinkedIn. I hope most people here have a LinkedIn profile. That's probably the one social media network that I think does can add a lot of value. But finding people, if you want to work in finance, I know we've used finance as an example quite a bit. But if you're interested in in say you want to work in finance, find someone like JoJo on LinkedIn, or actually talk to us. We're totally open. I think we're both totally open to being mentors to anyone in this room, any and everyone in this room, if it's something of interest. But I think reaching out, having short chats with people, it can be a 15-minute phone call, it can be a 30-minute Zoom session, and it can be totally informal. That's really, I think, where you can get a lot of great advice and mentorship. And the other thing too, I think, is really having repeated interaction too. I think that's really important. Following up with people, and having people who can be a mentor to you, your whole life, or the whole period of your life where you want to be in this segment of this career, or I think it's really great to develop those sorts of relationships as well as you go.
Just a reminder that life is a game of volume. Like we were talking about resilience and persistence. This is in all areas of your life, in work life, personal life, professional life, and love life. The more jobs you work at, the more you find out who you are as a worker in your work life. The more friends and the more you get out there and meet people, the better time you have in your personal life, professional life. You're at different companies. Get to know the people at the different companies. That's your professional life. Get out there, know the people. Everything is a volume game. And love life, that's an easy one. We all know that. If you only date one or two people. Are you going to meet Prince Charming or
I hope not at the same time.
Sleeping Beauty?
Not at the same time. One dating one person
what are
at a
the
time.
chances?
This is still a Catholic institution.
What are the chances, that the first person, is going to be walking down the aisle? It's just, chances aren't in your corner. Somebody agrees with me. I'm going to recommend, I don't think I included this, but this is included in here. Follow CNBC Make It and CNBC Watch It. He said the same thing I did. I said, I've been saying this for years, and then I saw this just in March of this year. People underestimate how much it takes to be very successful. J.P. Mancini. Look at him. He's naked with his baby. What else could be great? He was in the Air Force at 25. Found out what a good work ethic was. He got into car sales, all those car dealerships. He cared about people. He started out in sales. He wanted to be complete opposite of everything people hated about salespeople and car dealerships. He was a car guy, but he knew he wanted to get into some business that held good resale value. So he did a lot of research. He spent 300 hours researching models, and he landed on Axopar brand boat. In 2020, he bought a boat. It was a smaller one, only $170,000. He could afford it. Then he was doing so well, he actually made enough money to buy a bigger boat. He charges between $7.99 and $18.99 for 2 to 8 hour trips, not including gas, fuel, and gratuity. He said, there's a reason people pay for the Ritz-Carlton when there's a Motel 6 up the road for $39.99 per night. Mancini says it's all about the experience. I know if you look at this story, he was making over $300,000 selling cars. He was a general sales manager. He was really successful. But it ate up all of his time. It ate up his Saturdays, too. He started to have a family, and he wanted to make that money or more But when he had children, his time became more valuable. So he said, how can I still make a lot of money so my family has a comfortable lifestyle, but I don't have to physically be there? And this is what he went into. Anyone ever see this before? Some more detail. Yeah, it's never that, right? Anybody here over the age of 40? It's never this here. Just slick line, go from poor and unsuccessful to successful and millions of dollars. Never goes that way. You start, you're insecure a lot, you work really hard, it gets you nowhere, you're back to being insecure a lot, you get lots of help, life happens, you fail a lot, look it up, all this here. Seem like an overnight to success to everyone not involved.
Does anyone here worry like I do? I worry a lot. But I think there's something to be said, and this is something I've sort of grown to, understand over time. It's that there's so much uncertainty in life, and this is not going to change. That's just the way the world works, and no one's career path is going to be a straight line, and so all those hoops and turns, at some level, you sort of kind of have to love, the uncertainty, or you have to love, that, in the same sense, you don't know who, your spouse may be, but there's some like love, in, that uncertainty, who could be that mystery, that mystery person, or, what will be that mystery career, there's something really exciting about that, I think, that you don't necessarily even know what, the best opportunities will be in your life. And I think sometimes the more you try, and I think it is important, to plan things, certainly planning your day, having a calendar, using, a Google Calendar is great. That's sort of what I use. Those sorts of little planning things are great. If, you can sort of plan, what major you want to do, what you want to be doing in 5 years. That's all things that I think you should be 100% doing. But I think there's a limit to it. You can't plan out every single workplace you'll work at, but there's a great but you can also see there's great opportunity in that, and I think over planning, saying oh, I'm gonna work at Goldman Sachs my entire career, I'm gonna work there for 30 years, and I'm gonna become CEO, or I'm gonna become I'm gonna run for office and become president of the United States. Well, over my lifetime, I think there's only going to be 9 or 10 presidents. It's great. I was actually born in Canada, so I can't run for president. So this is not a problem that I have. But it's really important, to I think really, when you're dealt with setbacks, or even if you do have that sort of plan, like I want to be CEO of this company, or president of this university, or wherever have you, you'll have setbacks, and I think really learning to have contingencies, a plan B, or other things that having an idea of wouldn't it be cool if I did this instead? I think embracing that non-linearity of your career path, and expecting that you may get setbacks, you may have to move to a different place, or you may have to find an opportunity elsewhere. I think just being ready for that, I think is really key. But in a strange way, I think if you can learn to enjoy some of that uncertainty, and not necessarily, take, it so seriously that, that every, setback is a huge personal failure. Everybody deals with, with failure. And again, if it's what we said earlier, if you're not failing, then, maybe you're not trying hard enough. I think, everybody should be constantly failing, and that's part of, persistence, really.
I'm sure you all know this, but I just wanted to write it down on paper and so you guys could have it and look at it every day, every week, every month. But this is what it takes. It's another way of looking at those charts. Nobody sees everything that goes into the success. But everybody that is successful has all of those. The last component that we're going to talk about, only a couple more slides here, is Your Future and Friend Rule by Jim Rohn. Jim Rohn went on to mentor the biggest and the best CEOs of the 70s, 80s, and 90s. In the 1970s, he was the first one to develop this theory that you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Show me your friends and I will show you your future. This relates to the law of averages and the theory that the result of any situation will be the average of all outcomes. This theory that Jim Rome, who went on to inspire and completely influence Tony Robbins. Without Jim Rome, there would be no Tony Robbins. This theory in the 1970s grew and got such mass attention and mass success. By 2010, there were so many people that studied just that theory, they even looked into it more and they found out more that you need to examine and obsess over your entire network. You need to know where you sit inside the larger network of your social community. You are not the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with. It's way bigger than that. You are the average of all the people who surround you. Look around you and make sure you're in the right surroundings. Stand next to the smartest person in the room as often as possible. Here we heard of Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs stood next to Steve Wozniak. Harold Ramis stood next to Bill Murray. Sean Combs stood next to Dr. Dre. Mark Zuckerberg stood next to Chamath Palihapitiya. Sam Adams stood next to his cousin John Adams, who stood next to Benjamin Franklin. The mentorship goes up, but John Adams and Thomas Jefferson were peer mentors to each other. They didn't agree a lot, and they still built this country. Put yourself in orbits and communities and networks and neighborhoods and in cities that have endless opportunities to be stimulated by and to engage in. I see the Forrest Gump scenario often, sitting on a park bench and waiting for life to come to you. This middle section here, that I don't even know if you're going to be able to see, this middle section here, if I did anything right or if I was really smart about anything, it was this. I was in college taking a bunch of classes. I graduated and I really thought I knew what I wanted to do, but I wasn't really sure and I wanted answers. I was a teenager, I worked a bunch of jobs and I was in my early 20s and I worked a bunch of jobs and I wanted answers. But you don't have them when you're 20 or 25 or 30. You don't even have all the answers to everything when you're older. But I knew if I put myself around other successful people, around other smart people, around other people that were working at great companies, trying to get in at great companies, I did this right. I wasn't the smartest in the room, I wasn't the dumbest in the room, but I thought, you know, I'm going to apply all the classic traits to working hard and being successful, and if you shoot for the moon, you land among the stars. So I did that. My story, I told this on a few Zooms, but I'll tell it again because I think I see some new faces in here. The job market was pretty hot, and I worked to have a killer resume by the time I graduated Seton Hill. I started putting out resumes. One of the people that advised me to do all of us upon graduation was Professor Jinta, and I'm so glad she's here. Put out your resumes, work on your resumes. I had my resume done in the summer. I wasn't graduating until December. But up until then, I knew I wasn't just sitting in front of a computer hoping that I would have good stuff to put on there. I started working and earning money, I think, when I was 11 years old. I did some part-time work for my family. My family and friends tried to help me. But by the time I graduated, I had a good resume in the summer. I graduated in December. I had a job offer and accepted in October in Manhattan of October of '99. I wasn't graduating until December. I said, hey, listen, I got to finish up these classes in November. I got to take some of these final exams. I can do them early. And they said, well, do them early, come up and work for us, and then we'll fly you back to walk at graduation, then we'll come back up. So I started working in November. I took my exams early, started working in November in Manhattan, and they flew me back here to walk at Seton Hill graduation. And then I went back. And I haven't looked back since. So I wasn't sure what city I wanted to be. And I knew a few things, but I know I didn't know a lot, and I wanted to be in a place where I could get some answers quickly. So I had put resumes out there to Pittsburgh, to Philadelphia, to Washington, D.C., to Baltimore, New York, Boston, kind of in the region. Anywhere. I didn't really go west. I went east. I essentially did the Pittsburgh, Washington, Boston corridor. Good schools, good companies, smart people, successful people. Somebody did tell me at one of my jobs, at one of my bosses when I was young, that 65% of all the wealth in this country was from Pittsburgh, D.C. to Boston, that triangle. 65% of all the wealth in this country is there. So I thought, oh, people there must, and they know how to make money. I'll go there, I'll figure it out. But after this all, remember to stand next to God as well. He is working and making your future supernatural with new things, and always remember that, with new jobs, new opportunities, new colleagues, new connections, new bank accounts, new travels, new healings, new perspectives, new influences. What he has in store for you is better than you could ever dream of it. So, but you've got to work with him. Even when things look dark, God has got us. Some of our recommended podcasts and books. These are not every single one that we love, but for conservation of time in this presentation, these are some really good ones. Here's how to reach us. Get on our calendar, schedule mentoring time with us. Now, the grand finale, let's go to the videotape.
One of the things I'd just say too on the, I think that on the faith and values thing, like I think that probably, it couldn't be said enough. I'm a practicing Catholic and very serious about my faith. I go to Mass every weekend or every Sunday. And, I think, no matter what your faith or your value system is, I think it's really important, especially, when you're, about to, go down, at the beginning of your career, really to remember, what it is, that's really core to you. And I think, there'll be times in your life where, you're out of a job, where, you're dealing with, death of a family member or a pet, or or something, or a terrible breakup, all these things, these are things that happen to everybody. And, I think, those are the times really when I think, turning to your faith really is so central. I think it's important to, but I think what that also means is that, even in good times, you're also, to have that faith in bad times, I think you also really need to treat it importantly in good times as well. And so, whatever that, faith or value system is for you, I think there really is, it really is, to me, it's the most important and valuable thing in my own life. Really, you can lose millions of dollars and make it back, and all that material stuff. When you're on your deathbed, I don't think there's I think there's very few people who say on their deathbed, that they wish they'd made more money, or had a promotion and that they didn't get, or something like that. But I think really spending time with family members. I think there's a lot of remorse that people hadn't spent more time with family members, or that people hadn't been true to their self or their God or their faith or value system. I think those are the things that I think really matter. I think even especially as you become a career obsessive sort of person, and you're focused on that next step, that next promotion or raise or whatever have you, or next step, going to graduate school, you name it. I think having that again your core values and your belief system sort of in check, and reflecting on what that is, and continually sort of reflecting on how you're doing as a person aside from all this work stuff and all this career stuff and all this school stuff. I think having those routine check-ins, whether you do that on Sundays or just even beyond that, just when you have time to yourself, to meditate or sort of are engaging in sort of self-talk. I think, again, really can't emphasize enough how important that is.
When I was 7 years old and my sister was just 5 years old, we were playing on top of a bunk bed. I was 2 years older than my sister at the time. I mean, I'm 2 years older than her now, but at the time that meant she had to do everything that I wanted to do, and I wanted to play war. So we were up on top of our bunk beds, and on one side of the bunk bed I had put out all my G.I. Joe soldiers and weaponry, and on the other side were all my sister's My Little Ponies and ready for a cavalry charge. There are differing accounts of what actually happened that afternoon, but since my sister is not here with us today, let me tell you the true story. Which is my sister is a little bit on the clumsy side. And somehow, without any help or push from her older brother at all, suddenly Amy disappeared off of the top of the bunk bed and landed with us crash on the floor. And I nervously peered over the side of the bed to see what had befallen my fallen sister and saw that she had landed painfully on her hands and knees on all fours on the ground. I was nervous because my parents had charged me with making sure that my sister and I played as safely and as quietly as possible. And seeing as how I had accidentally broken Amy's arm just 1 week before, heroically pushing her out of the way of an oncoming imaginary sniper bullet, for which I have yet to be thanked. I was trying as hard as I could. She didn't even see it coming. I was trying as hard as I could to be on my best behavior, and I saw my sister's face this wail of pain and suffering and surprise, threatening to erupt from her mouth and threatening to wake my parents from the long winter's nap for which they had settled. So I did the only thing my little frantic 7-year-old brain could think to do to avert this tragedy. If you have children, you've seen this hundreds of times before. I said, Amy, wait, don't cry, don't cry. Did you see how you landed? No human lands on all fours like that. Amy, I think this means you're a unicorn. Now, that was cheating because there's nothing in the world my sister would want more than not to be Amy, the hurt 5-year-old little sister, but Amy, the special unicorn. Of course, this was an option that was open to her brain at no point in the past. And you could see on my poor, manipulated sister's face conflict, as her little brain attempted to devote resources to feeling the pain and suffering, surprise she just experienced, or contemplating her newfound identity as a unicorn. And the latter won out. Instead of crying, instead of ceasing our play, instead of waking my parents with all the negative consequences that would have ensued for me, instead, a smile spread across her face, and she scrambled right back up onto the bunk bed with all the grace of a baby unicorn. With one broken leg. What we stumbled across at this tender age of just 5 and 7, we had no idea at the time, was something that was going to be at the vanguard of a scientific revolution occurring 2 decades later in the way that we look at the human brain. What we had stumbled across is something called positive psychology, which is the reason that I'm here today and the reason that I wake up every morning. When I first started talking about this research outside of academia, out with companies and schools, the very first thing they said to never do is to start your talk with a graph. The very first thing I wanted to do is start my talk with a graph. This graph looks boring, but this graph is the reason that I get excited and wake up every morning. And this graph doesn't even mean anything. It's fake data. What we found is if I got this data back studying you here in the room, I would be thrilled because there's very clearly a trend that's going on there, and that means that I can get published, which is all that really matters. The fact that there's one weird red dot that's up above the curve, there's one weird in the room, you know who you are, I saw you earlier. That's no problem. That's no problem, as most of you know, because I can just delete that dot. I can delete that dot because that's clearly a measurement error, and we know that's a measurement error because it's messing up my data. So one of the very first things that we teach people in economics and statistics and business and psychology courses is how, in a statistically valid way, do we eliminate the weirdos? How do we eliminate the outliers? So that we can find the line of best fit, which is fantastic if I'm trying to find out how many Advil the average person should be taking, too. But if I'm interested in potential, if I'm interested in your potential or for happiness or productivity or energy or creativity, what we're doing is we're creating the cult of the average with science. If I ask a question like how fast can a child learn how to read in a classroom, scientists change the answer to how fast does the average child learn how to read in that classroom, and then we tailor the class right towards the average. Now, if you fall below the average on this curve, then psychologists get thrilled, because that means you're either depressed or you have a disorder or hopefully both. We're hoping for both because our business model is if you come into a therapy session with one problem, we want to make sure you leave knowing you have 10. So you'll keep coming back over and over again. We'll go back into your childhood if necessary, but eventually what we want to do is to make you normal again. But normal is merely average. And what I posit and what positive psychology posits is that if we study what is merely average, we will remain merely average. Then instead of deleting those positive outliers, what I intentionally do is come into a population like this one and says, why? Why is it that some of you are so high above the curve in terms of your intellectual ability, athletic ability, musical ability, creativity, energy levels, your resiliency in the face of challenge, your sense of humor? Whatever it is, instead of deleting you, what I want to do is study you. Because maybe we can glean information, not just how to move people up to the average, but how we can move the entire average up at our companies and schools worldwide. The reason this graph is important to me is when I turn on the news, it seems like the majority of the information is not positive. In fact, it's negative. Most of it's about murder, corruption, diseases, natural disasters, and very quickly, my brain starts to think that's the accurate ratio of negative to positive in the world. What that's doing is creating something called the medical school syndrome, which if you know people who have been to medical school during the first year of medical training, as you read through a list of all the symptoms and diseases that could happen, suddenly you realize you have all of them. I have a brother-in-law named Bobo, which is a whole other story. Bobo married Amy the unicorn. Bobo called me on the phone from Yale Medical School. And Bobo said, "Sean, I have leprosy." Which even at Yale is extraordinarily rare. But I had no idea how to console poor Bobo because he had just gotten over an entire week of menopause. See, what we're finding is not necessarily the reality that shapes us, but the lens through which your brain views the world that shapes your reality. And if we can change the lens, not only can we change your happiness, we can change every single educational and business outcome at the same time. When I applied to Harvard, I applied on a dare. I didn't expect to get in, and my family had no money for college. When I got a military scholarship 2 weeks later that allowed me to go, suddenly something that wasn't even a possibility became a reality. When I went there, I assumed everyone else would see it as a privilege as well, that they'd be excited to be there. Even if you're in a classroom full of people smarter than you, you'd be happy just to be in that classroom, which is what I felt. But what I found there is while some people experienced that, when I graduated after my 4 years and then spent the next 8 years living in the dorms with the students, Harvard asked me to. Wasn't that guy. But what happened... I was an officer of Harvard to counsel students through the difficult 4 years, and what I found in my research and my teaching is that these students, no matter how happy they were with their original success of getting into the school, 2 weeks later their brains were focused not on the privilege of being there, nor on their philosophy or their physics. Their brain was focused on the competition, the workload, the hassles, the stresses, the complaints. When I first went in there, I walked into the freshman dining hall, which is where my friends from Waco, Texas, which is where I grew up, I know some of you have heard of it. When they come to visit me, they look around, they say, "This freshman dining hall looks like something out of Hogwarts from the movie Harry Potter," which it does. This is Hogwarts from the movie Harry Potter, and that's Harvard. And when they see this, they say, "Sean, why do you waste your time studying happiness at Harvard? Seriously, what does a Harvard student possibly have to be unhappy about?" Embedded within that question is the key to understanding the science of happiness. Because what that question assumes is that our external world is predictive of our happiness levels. When in reality, if I know everything about your external world, I can only predict 10% of your long-term happiness. 90% of your long-term happiness is predicted not by the external world, but by the way your brain processes the world. And if we change it, if we change our formula for happiness and success, what we can do is change the way that we can then affect reality. What we found is that only 25% of job successes are predicted by IQ. 75% of job successes are predicted by your optimism levels, your social support, and your ability to see stress as a challenge instead of as a threat. I talked to a boarding school up in New England, probably the most prestigious boarding school, and they said, "We already know that." So every year, instead of just teaching our students, we also have a wellness week, and we're so excited. Monday night, we have the world's leading expert coming in to speak about adolescent depression. Tuesday night is school violence and bullying. Wednesday night's eating disorders. Thursday night is illicit drug use. And Friday night, we're trying to decide between risky sex or happiness. I said, that's most people's Friday nights. Which I'm glad you liked, but they did not like that at all. Silence on the phone. And into the silence, I said, "I'd be happy to speak at your school, but just so you know, that's not a wellness week. That's a sickness week." What you've done is you've outlined all the negative things that can happen, but not talked about the positive. The absence of disease is not health. Here's how we get to health. We need to reverse the formula for happiness and success. In the past 3 years, I've traveled to 45 different countries, working with schools and companies in the midst of an economic downturn. And what I found is that most companies and schools follow a formula for success, which is this: if I work harder, I'll be more successful. And if I'm more successful, then I'll be happier. That undergirds most of our parenting styles, our managing styles, the way that we motivate our behavior. And the problem is, it's scientifically broken and backwards for 2 reasons. First, every time your brain has a success, you just change the goalpost of what success looked like. You got good grades, now you have to get better grades. You got into a good school, now you have to get a better school. You got a good job, now you have to get a better job. You hit your sales target, we're going to change your sales target. And if happiness is on the opposite side of success, your brain never gets there. What we've done is we've pushed happiness over the cognitive horizon as a society. And that's because we think we have to be successful, then we'll be happier. But the real problem is our brains work in the opposite order. If you can raise somebody's level of positivity in the present, then their brain experiences what we now call a happiness advantage, which is your brain at positive performs significantly better than it does at negative, neutral, or stressed. Your intelligence rises, your creativity rises, your energy levels rise. In fact, what we found is that every single business outcome improves. Your brain at positive is 31% more productive than your brain at negative, neutral, or stressed. You're 37% better at sales. Doctors are 19% faster, more accurate at coming up with the correct diagnosis when positive instead of negative, neutral, or stressed, which means We can reverse the formula. If we can find a way of becoming positive in the present, then our brains work even more successfully, as we're able to work harder, faster, and more intelligently. What we need to be able to do is to reverse this formula so we can start to see what our brains are actually capable of. Because dopamine, which floods into your system when you're positive, has two functions. Not only does it make you happier, it turns on all the learning centers in your brain, allowing you to adapt to the world in a different way. We've found that there are ways you can train your brain to be able to become more positive. In just a 2-minute span of time, done for 21 days in a row, we can actually rewire your brain, allowing your brain to actually work more optimistically and more successfully. We've done these things in research now in every single company that I've worked with, getting them to write down 3 new things that they're grateful for 21 days in a row, 3 new things each day. And at the end of that, their brain starts to retain a pattern of scanning the world not for the negative, but for the positive first. Journaling about one positive experience you've had over the past 24 hours allows your brain to relive it. Exercise teaches your brain that your behavior matters. We find that meditation allows your brain to get over the cultural ADHD that we've been creating by trying to do multiple tasks at once, and allows our brains to focus on the task at hand. And finally, random acts of kindness or conscious acts of kindness. We get people, when they open up their inbox, to write one positive email praising or thanking somebody in their social support network. And by doing these activities and by training your brain, just like we train our bodies, what we found is we can reverse the formula for happiness and success, and in doing so, not only create ripples of positivity, but create a real revolution. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Max Yonko. I'm a junior here at Seton Hill.
Hi, Max.
Nice to meet you.
Thanks. Nice to meet you.
And my question is about AI, and just like a business model involving AI. So if you were running like ChatGPT, then how would you get around the idea that ChatGPT and all these AI machines are being run on websites that are using ad revenue to run their websites, and that AI is taking away from their ad revenue? Would these websites that are being funded by advertisements would eventually be shut down by this AI machine? Is there a way around that, or is that something that has been brought up before?
It's a good question. I guess the question is like on is.
And it's a model. I think it's a being nimble and a model tweak to the question. Where I've seen the most use of AI is for efficiency and optimization agnostically across all businesses, right? So they're going to use it for where the need is, where they're not knocking anybody else out yet. As far as these platforms that are going to lose a little bit of ad revenue, well, they could have other good or bad problems going on. Yeah, if Google loses some ad revenue, they have a lot of other business streams that are going to keep them afloat, and they're going to figure out how to work in the new world of the 2030s and the 2040s where AI is a part of it. Facebook having a lot of problems, or Meta having a lot of problems, don't have a lot of other lines. They're really reliant on their ad revenue. So yeah, they're going to have a problem. The Googles are not, the Facebooks are, and the Metas are. But I think right now, where I'm seeing the big implementation of AI is agnostically across companies to attract customers and clients. And I think there's still going to be a good amount, companies are still going to have to advertise and market and acquire. There's going to be a business acquisition to acquire those customers and clients, and they're going to want to see about the product. So there's always going to be a need for, to get more information via advertising and marketing. That's what I've seen.
I mean, it's a great question. What the long-term impacts of large language models are going to be. If I knew the answer to that, I would be a much wealthier person. But I think it's a huge. it's a question I think many people are asking. I think what's interesting about ChatGPT and OpenAI is that which owns ChatGPT, I think it has both a free version and a premium version. There's nothing that really stops other companies from developing their own large language models. Some that may be better, that I don't know, but it's hard to know or see what the implications are. I mean, Facebook and others have been dealing with other challenges, just the fact that they operate in an ad revenue sort of based model, but Facebook is an app, right? And it's an app that's benefits from being on iPhones and Android phones, right? And so when Apple decides that it's not going to share customer-specific identifiers anymore, causes Facebook stock to drop by 40% overnight. I mean, there's clearly a lot of stuff going on in the tech world. Even though I live in Silicon Valley, I know very little about what's going on or how things are going to go. Other people, I'm sure, could give you much better answers, but we'll have to wait and see. That's, I guess, part of the fun, that uncertainty part.
I just wanted to add to how we're using AI. I work for a large pharmaceutical company out of Cambridge, Massachusetts, and we're very interested in AI and how we can use it strategically, either in marketing, product management, patient care models. But right now, we are not using any form of AI due to security reasons. We cannot, as a company, upload any data to these because we don't know how it will be used in the future. And also, as a clinician, I've played around with ChatGPT and put some patient cases in and looking at the data. It's not perfect, and so you have to do your own research. And I'm a PharmD, PubMed or Embase, and pull that data down and read it and take it for face value based on patient per patient. But right now, a large pharmaceutical company, we just got a memo sent down. We are not to engage in ChatGPT or any AI.
Thanks, Dr. Bethany.
Hi, my name is Luke. I thought this was an awesome presentation. I know everyone's taking something away from this today.
Thanks.
Just to change topic a little bit, my question is, for those who are getting ready to graduate soon, or if you're a sophomore, junior, senior, or even any year in college actually, getting ready for internships or entry-level jobs, how would you prepare for a internship interview or any kind of interview for a job that's related or goes with your career path? How would you stand out to your employer for them to say, oh yeah, I want that person, like they need to be on my team? And then also, how would you also prepare for a virtual interview, because I know a lot of companies are gearing towards that as well?
So your first question is, I would, you've probably done this, but if you want to, write out your strengths and your weaknesses. Definitely write out the courses you're studying now, what you already have under your belt, and what you're going to be planning to do in the next year or two. Know yourself inside and out, and you got to talk about your entire person. The student that you are, the classes you already taken, the classes you're about to take, what sort of extracurricular you've done, what sports you have done, what your hobbies are, if you've achieved a significant level in a hobby or a sport, or if you've won an award, get that down there. Any award you've won, any strength you've shown in high school or college, get all that down there. Also, then you want to research the company, get to know as much about the company as you can, because you want to know about the company, who founded the company, how it runs. As far as on the Zoom or the virtual, I would say you can never be too dressed up for these things. I mean, don't wear a black tie and tux, but a nice collared shirt. If it's very formal, go for the tie and the shirt and the tie. You want to have good lighting. You want to have your good audio and video working out. Don't just cross your fingers and hope it's all working. Do a test run. Make sure it's up and running. So those are some basics. And I would encourage, if there are Like I did some summer camps and I did some summer studies in different programs. Do some of those. Like when I was in high school, I went to summer camp at St. Vincent for 2 weeks. Or, look at things that will differentiate you. Look to see what's going on. Is there a 2-week program or a 2-week camp? Something going on that can differentiate you from that. Even if you want to, I've seen people take a trip out west for a week or two, or take a trip for 1 week, but make it, cultural and historical, visit historical sites, have a depth on something, like really go deep on who you are as a person and a professional, and show your strengths, whether that's karate or tennis or football or video games. I mean, whatever it is, it has to be, get something respectable, nothing that's going to look negative, but show your depth and commitment and achievement in that. Know yourself inside and out, know the company inside or out. Know the company's competitors and why that company is great and why you want to work for them. And so, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think just hanging on what you said, doing lots and lots and lots of research on the company, like spending hours and hours and hours. One, you to the extent that it's possible, I think you want to know that job that you're applying for, interviewing for, as well as the person you're interviewing with, beforehand. And sometimes it's not always possible, right? But to get every detail or to get the best picture that one could possibly get. But I think one, the internet is obviously your friend. If you can look up certain forums that may be related to this particular job, and understanding what people, at least in this kind of group, in this type of firm, do. And then if it's possible, reach out to maybe not the person you're interviewing with, reach out to some other people, maybe at that company. Understand what does that group, even if it's in a different division, what do people in that group do? Or somebody at another company that's similar to, again, that firm. Asking them, finding them on LinkedIn, find them through your network, asking them, figuring out exactly what they do. And then, sort of after doing that research, one, knowing yourself, knowing your strengths, weaknesses, because that's what they're going to be asking you about. Actually knowing what you write on your resume. I mean, if you're using an old resume, it's very easy to forget, the things that you put on that resume. So knowing that cold, being able to speak to your resume, very, very well, that's one skill. And then the other thing I think where you can really sort of stand out is just writing down beforehand, what are some really good questions that you can ask that employer? Because, there's always that point at the end of the interview, do you have any questions for me? It's classic. And I think building really, really thoughtful questions before you go into that interview can really, really distinguish yourself. It's the end of the interview, too. That's probably going to be the part that they partly remember because it's at the end, right?
You want to go out with a bang, with a firecracker.
Yeah.
But a good way, too, to build connections is when you get your LinkedIn profile, upgrade, and we can help you with that. When you get it perfect, you'll have your resume on there, and when you're looking for jobs and internships, just go to LinkedIn Jobs and love jobs and internships. You can put in the search and, Pittsburgh, PA, whatnot. And they had this easy apply button. It literally takes 2 minutes or less to easy apply. Go through all those. Certain times when I did not want to stay at the company, when I wanted to go to another company, I utilized LinkedIn Jobs. You can easy apply to 30 positions, and I mean about 30 minutes. You will get 5 people will reach out to you, so it takes about 30 to get 5 responses. And then some might take a little longer, but even the ones that say apply and they redirect you to the website, we're talking 10 minutes. And then once you have a profile on that website, you can easy apply that on that website. So when more jobs come up, you can just easy apply. I mean, and then recruiters oftentimes will contact you, and placement agents and headhunters. And that's fantastic because you're in with them, they can talk to you. They'll even help you, you need to tailor your resume to look this, because I think you can do it, but it's not on your resume. And you say, yeah, I can do that. And they're like, well, they want to see this, right? And use job descriptions that you can do. If there's things you can do in a job description, and you have done, put them on your resume so you can kind of come up in the searches. You guys have a lot of tools at your fingertips that I didn't have.
Yeah. So if you don't have a LinkedIn account, make sure you get one. And I say two, values. Make sure you figure out, know what your core values are, and I'd say, three, make sure you have a resume ready to go, and just know it, and be able to speak to it like the back of your hand. If there's sort of three sort of follow-ups or things to do, those would be sort of the three things that I would recommend.
And I just want to remind people that we have this thing through Alumni Relations called Career Connectors, and we have probably 200 to 250 alumni who, if you're they're in jobs both nationally and locally, and you can email Alumni Relations, and they can connect you with those people. So if you're applying to something that is a job that we have represented, you can talk to one of our alums there, and they can tell you everything from the culture, whether it's better to have a tie or not have a tie, to what this person does and that kind of thing. So, and we continue to grow their program. So it's something to really take advantage of. And you just email Alumni Relations. So I just want to thank you both this evening for all of your time and effort in putting this presentation together and in joining us and sharing your wisdom and experience. And we love having you back, JoJo, and we love having you, Jon. So thank you. Please join me in thanking them.
Thank you.